Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Rav Dustler. Okay, we are in the middle of a fascinating conversation as to why Am Yisrael asked Hashem to pull back and stop speaking, asking Moshe to take over of the conversation, so to speak, and give over the Aseret Dibur. We're on page 46. And one of the things that we came out with, Labriyut, is that when there's a danger of receiving free spirituality, that you have this high level of spirituality that is you're unable to maintain. And therefore, Am Yisrael, we're not saying we don't want to hear from Hashem. We're saying we want to do something that allows us to earn a deeper level of connection to Hashem, not the freebie that was happening as Hashem was speaking. So we said yesterday, we left off yesterday with this on the bottom of page 45, on the top of page 46, that concept of tests. He says it should happen that a person is raised to the high level of love and joy by awakening from above, without an adequate previous effort of his part. We'll find that his gift is temporary. Sooner or later, it will be withdrawn. And therefore, all spiritual effects work the same way. I have a friend, sort of school in Yerushalayim, where the philosophy is that none of the students in the yeshiva is allowed to grow a beard, and they're not allowed to wear white and black. They're not allowed to get hats. Why? Because there's a fear that chitzoni growth will create the illusion, ki'ilu, like you're actually growing. And therefore, they don't want that. They'd much rather you focus on your Gemara, focus on learning. Don't worry about the external aspects of wearing any of that kind of stuff. Just learn spiritually, do the real things, stop doing it. It's like if you ever have like a serious trainer, right? And you'll have a guy who goes out and he starts buying himself like the knee braces, and he starts buying himself like the elbow pads, and he starts buying those big belts, and the trainer's like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, what ends up happening is actually you get a dopamine kick when you actually do chitzoni things, and it creates the illusion that you actually, in your brain, that you actually did those things.
What does chitzoni mean?
Chitzoni means external. Okay, thank you. Chitzoniyut is external, pnimiyut is inner, chitzoni is external, right? So you have these people that do these external things, and the brain like just pumps the dopamine, and it creates. This is why they tell you never to tell people what you want to do, right? Never tell. What's that? Oh, sorry. Never tell people that you're going to go on a diet. Never tell people about your goals, because the act and the art of sharing actually creates a dopamine pump. And it creates the illusion, look, you already started the process and you did nothing.
Does it somehow lessen the likelihood that you will go on the
diet? Yeah, because what happens is that once you have the reward without doing the action, right, there's a less likelihood I feel good already. No, you're like, oh, what happened? Why take the risk? Don't say anything. Better to hold in. There's something about the withholding and holding out and actually doing the action. That's how we actually have change. So here he's saying that, we go through several trials, tests in darkness, and even in despair. The purpose of this is to test to the extent which he has absorbed the lesson he has learned during the good times. The world in which we live is not run on free gifts. This would defeat the whole purpose of creation. This is where we left off yesterday. Many apparent difficulties can be explained in this principle. For example, in crossing the Red Sea, Israel perceived with its own eyes the power and the glory of God. Yet immediately afterwards, they walked for 3 days in the desert and they found no water. They complained bitterly to Moshe. The contrast is striking, but the meaning is clear. The revelation at the Red Sea were from above. They were very soon withdrawn, and Israel was made to face the very mundane test of the lack of water. This is, I bumped into a guy yesterday who, in a shawarma store, who I haven't seen in 32 years. You got to catch up with a guy. I didn't recognize him at all. If he wouldn't know it was me, I would never. The guy had like a long beard. He's got like white hair already. It's like looks very aged. Like it looks like he had a hard life. So I'm like, last time I saw you was in Israel 32 years ago. Like, what happened? He's like, I got married, I got divorced, I've been in and out of rehab, I just got out, I just got remarried. I was like, holy cow, I wasn't expecting that kind of a story, right? But I was asking you a little bit about the addiction, right? And the addiction works in a way where you start off getting that hit, and you need more and more and more and more and more and more until it destroys you, right? This was it was not alcohol. It was like crack. He said at the end. But anyway, the same is true with spirituality. On a spiritual level, you can get yourself so high on ruchniyut, on spirituality, that you just lose yourself to that process, The Jude
Tzfat.
Tzfat is an example of that. The sons of Nadav and Avihu are an example of that, right? They're also an example of that. They wanted to so desperately to connect to God, they made mistakes in that process. They burnt out their souls. Okay. In Devarim, Moshe tells the Jewish people that all the trials and tribulations of the desert wanderings were inflicted on them. This is a quote: in order to make you feel your dependence and to test you for your own ultimate benefit. That's the end of the quote. What is the benefit? To enable us to earn our spiritual insight by our own efforts. There's nothing more profound than being able to say, I did this for myself. No one gave it to me. No one handed it to me. Daddy didn't write me the check. I pushed. I won. I prevailed. And
where does it say that you would rather grow and eat your one tomato that you grew versus receiving 9 tomatoes as a gift? Somewhere in the Tanakh.
I have never heard of it in that in those terms. But it sounds more like a Confucius says, one tomato.
It's in our tradition.
It could be. No, there is something similar to that. No, there's something called Na'ama de Kisufa, the bread of shame. Right? It's the same idea. Like that the man was called the bread of shame. Why? Because they didn't earn it. Every single day they had bread delivered to their door. They did nothing to deserve it. And that's called the bread of shame.
Was it less of a bread of shame if, according to how righteous you were yesterday, determined how close it was to your front door? Maybe you feel that you earned it.
I don't think it's a good question. I don't think it matters. The fact that there was something that was given to you for free, in this physical world, that is called the bread of shame. It didn't matter. Proximity didn't matter. You could argue that people had to work further away. They had to earn it more.
Your good looks is bread of shame?
My good looks has nothing to do with me. That's what God gave me. It's my stumbling block. It's not me. But when it comes to the parnasa also, right? That's not us.
Of course not.
That's Borei Olam. Let's see what happens to Oban. Anyway, in the future redemption, it says, he started talking about the times of Mashiach, he says that when we are informed that we shall undergo of somewhat of a mysterious preliminary stage called the era of Mashiach ben Yosef. And he says that which will end in failure. This is Gemara in Sukkot says that when Mashiach ben Yosef will come, that whole process will end in failure. People will see him, they'll get excited, and boom, crash and burn. During this stage, Messianic revelation will abound, but since the generation will become unworthy, those revelations will be undeserved. Consequently, according to the rule we now recognize, they will be withdrawn. Mashiach ben Yosef will die, and the resulting disappointment will lead to many darkest despair. Only those who realize the nature of the test and have the faith to withstand it will be able to welcome the ultimate Mashiach, Mashiach ben David. This is kind of a scary thing. The Chachamim say that it's unclear as to whether or not Mashiach ben Yosef has occurred or not. Different opinions say that he has, some say he hasn't. It doesn't really matter. L'maaseh, what does it look like? It looks like, according to some, it was Bar Kochva. That Bar Kochva was Mashiach ben Yosef, and that he already fulfilled that mission. But some people say, no, that's got to come in tandem. You got to have the Mashiach ben Yosef, that mission. So unclear. But everyone agrees that...
Head fake.
Everyone agrees, it's a nice head fake, that Mashiach will come with a test. And there's one opinion that says, this is based on Shlomo Auerbach's great-grandfather, in his Kava Yashar, says that in the same way when Eliyahu Hanavi brought the korbanot against the priests of Baal. I'm not sure if you remember the story, but the Jewish people were.
We just went through it with nobody else was here, but we just went through
anyway,
it.
He challenges the priests of Baal. The priests of Baal say, "No worries, we're going to get our bull to combust." And he says, "Yeah, they're cutting themselves, they're squirting blood everywhere, and nothing is happening." Eliyahu comes down and says, "Okay, it's enough. You had too much time. Let me give it a try." And he says, douse it with water, and he says, Shema, boom, the whole fire comes down and it eviscerates the whole entire korban, right? So, as a result of the Jewish people witnessing a miracle and not changing as a result of it,
and they didn't earn the miracle.
At Ba'achat HaYamim, there's going to be a same exact thing happen. He says, where the children of Ishmael and the children of Bnei Israel are going to bring korbanot. And we're going to pray, and they're going to pray, but the fire is going to fall on their korban, and they're going to be, and we're going to be tested to see whether or not we're going to hold on to our faith.
And then we're expelled.
Well, it's a whole other thing. What ends up happening? I want to do this last part over here with Israel's sacrifice, and we'll finish up over here. He says, now we can perhaps understand from a different angle Israel's wish to relinquish the high-level spiritual experience they had been granted. They were all well aware of these tremendous spiritual insight that came from above without adequate preparation from their part. What they feared were the tests they knew must inevitably follow. Is it right to refuse a prophetic experience? That's his question. If you were given the choice to have a prophetic experience, can you say, no, I don't want it?
You'd feel that you didn't earn it according to what you're saying.
May one deliberately lower one's madrega? Can you choose to say, I don't want to be at such a high spiritual level? Maybe it was these considerations which led Moshe to encourage them to continue with their high level. That's the Gemara in Shemot. But God overruled his objections. I have heard what these people have said. This is quoting Hashem to you. They have spoken well. If only they would always be so much in awe of me, it would be well with them and their children forever. Meaning, if you could go ahead and really live in a world where you're actually fighting to maintain a spiritual standard that you actually own, Hashem says that's great. And therefore, it's okay to expect want a lower level. Rav Chaim of Volozhin, he says that the Gaon of Vilna was once offered a magid. A magid is like an angel that comes down that teaches you spiritual insights. Okay, so to reveal all the deepest secrets of the Torah. And the Vilna Gaon said, I don't want it. I don't want your secrets. So this could be puzzling. How can one refuse heavenly aid? But now the explanation is clear. The Gaon, in his humility, was convinced that his spiritual achievements were inadequate to warrant such an excess of divine aid. Like Israel at Sinai, he feared the tests that must inevitably follow from such an imbalance. God bears witness that Israel was right to flee from the risk of spiritual failure. It is worthwhile to give up a spiritual heights which have not been earned in order to gain simple faith and fear of God and obedience to his will. Without such obedience, there can be no complete acceptance of the Torah. That is his concept of inward acceptance. Meaning the idea is like this. We said earlier that why did Moshe put the broken tablets, the Luchot Rishonot, the first tablets inside the ark and the Aron? And even though they're broken, you don't put a broken heirloom in something and save it. And the answer is because they represent a higher level. And then he said, okay, well, let's talk about the higher level they were on. Well, okay, they were on this higher level. If there's a high level, why did they ask Moshe to take over? Why didn't they keep going? And the answer is because they were afraid of not having the merit to maintain that high spirituality. And with the tests that would come afterwards, they probably would fail. And therefore, we don't want that. Bezrat Hashem, next week we'll pick up with, I don't know, I'm not sure yet. But tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem, we'll pick up with the next part of his essay on Shavuot. Have a great day, everybody.